Hello, I'm Oliver Colling, and this is my 70s TV childhood. Hello again, and welcome back to my 70s TV childhood. We are a podcast which is dedicated to looking back at what it was like to be a child in 1970s Britain, and the special part that television played in our lives back then. It was a strange time for our country, as the British people took to wearing brown, beige and orange garments, hankered after that avocado bathroom suite that the neighbours had just put in, drank themselves silly on Liebfraumilch, and laughed at Mike Yard's impressions of Ted Heath, Harold Wilson and Dennis Healey, as a nice alternative to the grim economic and social changes happening during the 70s. But whilst I was aware of what was going on to a certain extent, my life was more dominated by playing outside with my friends, going to school, and, of course, watching what was on television. Now, as we've said before in our podcast, there wasn't that much on television, with only 3 channels. And while some of it was great, some of it, well, to be honest, wasn't that good, but it proved a source of great comfort to many at the time, and provided a focal point for us to spend time together, often as families, sitting watching the small screen in the corner of the room. It was an experience we all felt together. No catch-up TV or streaming back then, just the one chance to watch a TV show, and if you missed it, well, you missed it. I've been going through our bulging digital postbag this week and was really pleased to receive a note via email from Danny, who said, "Can I just thank you for bringing so much joy and bringing back so many happy memories, many long forgotten. Certainly one of the best podcasts out there and one I never ever miss. Thanks, Danny. The check's in the post, whatever a check is. I would love you to do a special on The Good Life. We used to watch this as a family, and I remember my mum and dad enjoying it so much. Thank you again, Oliver. You really do bring joy from afar." Well, thank you for your kind words, Danny, and I'm so pleased that you enjoy listening. And the point you make about watching as a family is one which really resonates with me, and I'm sure many of you listening. Some of the shows I remember most fondly were ones which I watched with my parents and my sister. Sadly, my parents are no longer with us, but looking back to those innocent days, sat together watching the television, and in particular laughing at certain programmes, brings back some very happy memories of our loved ones. So thanks for making that point, Danny. Oh, and also, the Good Life point is taken. It is in our production schedule, so listen out. We'll be visiting that programme very soon. If you'd like to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. You can email, like Danny did, to oliver@my70stvchildhood.com. Leave a comment on our blog at www.my70stvchildhood.com, or get in touch via one of our many social media sites. We're on Facebook, X/Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And you can find us by searching for us on those platforms. Still with the postbag, our recent episode on Cut Final Day generated lots of comments across all of our various sites, and I'm quite reassured that I wasn't the only one for whom it was such a memorable day. Thanks Alan, Russell, Mike, Brenda, and many others for your comments and memories. Oh, and a special word for Edward, who was particularly grateful that we talked about that great Fulham team of the 1970s, as he feels they have been somewhat airbrushed out of history. Our pleasure, Edward. A team featuring Bobby Moore, Alan Mullery, and then joined by George Best the following season can't be forgotten very easily, I don't think. Speaking of things which can't be forgotten very easily, I noticed a social media post about Derek Griffiths this week. Now, Derek was a fixture in many of our childhoods. He was a familiar face for many of us from Play School, Play Away, and also lots of other shows like Cabbages and Kings, do you remember that? And Ring-a-Ding and Heads and Tails, where he particularly used his musical talents to sing all kinds of great songs. He really was extremely versatile, and thinking of his music put me in mind of a show in which he featured, which was first shown in 1975 in the Watch With Mother slot on BBC One. I also suspect that this show was made under the influence of something slightly hallucinogenic.
Here Comes Bod.
Everyone of a certain age remembers Bod, and not necessarily for the plot lines or drama. It was, well, a bit odd. It was based on a series of books by Joanne and Michael Cole, originally published in 1965. As well as being an authoring couple together, if that's a word, they worked together on a number of BBC children's shows, and created Fingerbobs in 1972. I'm not entirely surprised by that. We featured Fingerbobs in an episode in October 2021, following the death of Rick Jones, who played Yoffie, the narrator and puppeteer in the show. As many of you remember, Rick appeared to be on something most of the time he was on screen, and he later admitted that the BBC was quite relaxed in its approach to drug use by children's presenters. He said, "Once you were in, all laws were forgotten. I had a wonderful time. Marijuana was available like cornflakes." So I'm not really that surprised that Bod came from the same stable as Fingerbobs, as it was, well, quite bonkers. It featured a little boy called Bod, who was completely bald and appeared to be wearing a yellow dress. He had his own signature tune, as we just heard, and each adventure he had was called Bod and whatever. So we had episodes like Bod and the Dog, Bod and the Rain, and Bod and Breakfast. Now, all of the adventures had lots of music, which was provided by Derek Griffiths, hence reminding me of the show. They were all set in the town in which Bod lived and featured the same characters. I think Bod lived with his Aunt Flo, who used to move in time to her own theme tune as she came and sashayed on and off the screen. We also had a further group of recurring characters who each had their own theme tune. How many do you remember? How about Frank the Postman? Or what about Farmer Barleymow? And of course, probably my favourite, the long arm of the law represented by PC Copper. The stories were usually quite straightforward and involved some kind of simple premise. Oh, and they were all narrated by the comforting voice of John Le Mesurier, at the time a massive UK TV star as a result of playing Sergeant Wilson in Dad's Army. Have a listen to a typical opening of a story. This one is Bod and the Dog.
Here comes Bod. Bod is thinking about a dog. One day, I'll have a dog, he says. But what dog? What dog is my sort of dog? Along comes Aunt Flo. Now, if Aunt Flo had a dog, says Bod, what dog would she have? What dog is her sort of dog? I know. A poodle, yes. She looks the poodle type. Good morning, says Aunt Flo. Good dog, says Bod, who could still think of nothing but dog. Then along comes Frank the Postman. Now, what's Frank's dog? Says Bod. What sort of dog would Frank have? Yes, I think he's the terrier type. Good morning, Bod, says Frank. Good dog, says Bod, who can still think of nothing but dog. Then along comes Farmer Barleymow. Now, if Barleymow had a dog, says Bod, what sort of dog would he have? Yes, I think he is the sheepdog type. Bod is thinking about a dog. One day, I'll have a dog, he says. But what dog? What dog is my sort of dog? Along comes Aunt Flo. Now, if Aunt Flo had a dog, says Bod, what dog would she have? What dog is her sort of dog? I know. A poodle, yes. She looks the poodle type. Good morning, says Aunt Flo. Good dog, says Bod, who could still think of nothing but dog. Then along comes Frank the postman. Now, what's Frank's dog? Says Bod. What sort of dog would Frank have? Yes, I think he's the terrier type. Good morning, Bod, says Frank. Good dog, says Bod, who can still think of nothing but dog. Then along comes Farmer Barleymow. Now, if Barleymow had a dog, says Bod, what sort of dog would he have? Yes, I think he is the sheepdog type.
And so it went on. And this is the way each episode panned out. A very simple story. And everyone has a say on dogs, or the weather, or whatever. But the way the music was used gave it a rather otherworldly feel to fit in with the rather odd animation. All very, very strange. The show also had a few other regular features, narrated by Maggie Henderson, such as counting exercises, and Bod Snap, where she would take us through a series of playing cards featuring the main characters, and we had to shout out snap at the appropriate point.
2 coppers, snap. 2 flows, snap. Bod and Frank. That's not snap, it's 2 different pictures. You say snap when you see 2 pictures the same. Bod and Barleymow. No, that's not snap. Bod and Aunt Flo. No. Bod and Frank. No, that's not snap. Bod and Bod. Bod on one side and Bod on the other. Snap.
Maggie Henderson also narrated the other part of the show, which featured Alberto Frog and his amazing animal band.
A 1, a 2, a 3. There goes the animal band.
This was a completely different story in the show, featuring the rather eccentric frog, called Alberto, obviously, who travelled the world with his classical orchestra made up of lots of animal species. Generally, they would get involved in a minor adventure and do some good works, often involving playing a piece of classical music to make things all right. Before, inevitably, whoever had been helped asked Alberto if he wanted a reward. He always did, and he always chose the same thing.
It's quite thirsty work, conducting, said Alberto. I wouldn't say no to a milkshake. Any particular flavour? Said Mrs. Spencer. It's going to be orange, thought Gnu. It's going to be lemon, thought the ostriches. It's going to be, vanilla, thought the hippos. Who do you think was right? Lemon, said Alberto. The ostriches were right. Were you?
I always felt a bit sorry on behalf of the other members of the orchestra, as they'd never got anything for their hard work. Typical egotistic conductor thinking everything's all about them. Or am I overthinking this? Probably. As a postscript, unfortunately, the BBC wiped most of the Alberto Frog segments from their tapes in the early 1990s, so only 4 of the original 13 episodes are known to exist. That's a real shame because I'd love to sit through and guess what flavour milkshake Alberto was going to choose at least 13 times. So that was the show. If you don't remember it, you must be thinking, what on earth is this all about and what's Oliver talking about this time? Actually, even if you do remember, you're still probably thinking, what was it all about? I can't help but think that some of Rick James's marijuana managed to make it into the Bod production team, and as a result, we ended up with a show which all of us who saw it can't ever forget.
There goes Bod and his friends. But he'll be back.
Am I being unfair on Bod? Was its seemingly drug-influenced production all in my imagination, or did you find it as mystifying as I did? You can let me know via our blog at www.my70stvchildhood.com, on our social media sites as mentioned earlier, or just by emailing me, oliver@my70stvchildhood.com. So that's all we have time for this episode. If you enjoyed listening, then tell your friends and get them to join our happy band of listeners. Don't forget to like, rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. And also don't forget to join us for our next quiz in a week's time and our next full episode in a fortnight. So take care, be good to each other, and join me again soon for more from My 70s TV Childhood.